there's a lot of discussion about legal ramifications. The state attorney general talking about, making demands. Congress or Senator Rick Scott making demands of the football playoff committee and demanding transparency. Look, I'm not happy with what happened to Florida State. I don't like the way it happened. I think that there's a lot we can discuss about the process. I was on all of those conference calls with the playoff committee, and there's a lot that I don't like. Is it worth a United States senator getting involved and making demands of an independent playoff committee? You're not going to get anywhere with it. It's futility. Is it worth the state attorney general getting involved? That seems to be a path a lot are taking lately, right? When James Madison was going to be left out of the New Year's Six games, the Virginia state attorney general was going to make demands. When there have been probably 3 or 4 instances this year alone where state attorneys general, and please note, because I've seen it far too many times when people were covering the West Virginia ruling today on transfers, the plural of attorney general is attorneys general. Journalists, media people, it is not attorney generals. Stop it. Go back to journalism school or get an editor, one or the other. But we've seen that a lot this year. And does it go anywhere? No, it doesn't, because there is no jurisdiction for a state attorney general over the college football playoff committee. You have no jurisdiction to make these demands. So it goes nowhere. The next question, which we're going to lead to, I see this already.
There's this thing called
I knew that was going to get a reaction.
No, it's got nothing to do with the Florida State, right or wrong. It's
right.
Are you familiar with the Redskins case where they?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
There's this thing called discovery. You've heard of this,
right? Absolutely.
How did John Gruden get fired?
Right.
So then then you know these things, and you're saying these things, but you know what the reason why, and you know what the pressure puts on it, and you know as a journalist what they don't want is antitrust, and they don't want things being subpoenaed. So what I'm saying is,
now
these things without me telling you that. So it's a little bit of playing on words when you know why they're pushing this. And it's not to change it.
I know why they're pushing it, and the discovery will be embarrassing to the committee. There's no question about it.
It would completely what it will do is, if it gets to that, it will definitely put a very, because it's not that we talked about it. It's not a playoff committee. It's an invitational, and that's what
absolutely
needs to be. But that's not what was said. What was said is that this, and so that's why you have to put as much things out there. And really, it's an end game. The end game isn't to mess up the college football playoff. We all know what the end game is. We started this season off talking about what the end game is. The end game is now you're putting Boo in a bad situation because he's the chairman. You're putting the ACC in a bad position because they didn't fight for it. So you're making every case for Florida State for what they really want to do, and to not have a lot of this stuff come out. Because if they don't sue them, they won't get out of the GOR. They won't get out of the conference. So we know there's an end game in it. It's not to give Florida State the national championship this year. That won't happen.
Right.
But it is for the opportunity, because if this is the case, Florida State can run the table every year and not get into the college football invitational, which is a waste of time.
You gave me a lot to work with. That's why I love big game James, man. He's always got it going. Look, the difference with the Redskins and those issues is there is oversight of the NFL because of some antitrust exemptions, limited antitrust exemptions that they've been given, which means Congress got involved at some point with the NFL and therefore has very limited oversight. You hit a big phrase though, and that is the antitrust part, because the half of the things that the NCAA does right now, whether it's the transfer portal, NIL, whatever, are a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act, which will ultimately in the years to come be what brings down the NCAA. That having been said, I agree with you that this is about embarrassing the committee, embarrassing the ACC, humiliating Boo Corrigan. Look, Mark, I am not a conspiracy theorist. I don't, there wasn't another shooter on the grassy knoll in Dallas. We really did land on the moon. It wasn't just, on a movie set. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but if you were to connect some dots, there are dots to connect. When Stanford, Cal, and SMU were being brought or were being pitched to the ACC, there were not enough yes votes to get them in, right? But what was happening? Florida State, through all of this, and for the last year, has talked loudly and openly about its unhappiness with the ACC, its unhappiness with the financial dealings. I have backed their unhappiness. It is insanity that Rutgers is now making twice as much on its TV deal as Florida State or Clemson. It's ridiculous. The grant of rights is ridiculous. That having been said, who finally greased the skids to get Florida State to leave if they wanted to? Boo Corrigan, because he got his administration at North Carolina State to flip that vote, become the deciding yes vote to get SMU and Cal and Stanford in, so that the ACC was protected in the amount of teams they had should Florida State and others wish to leave. Now, who, excuse my language, but for all intents and purposes, screws Florida State with the playoff committee? It's Boo Corrigan's committee. There are dots that can be connected. And oh, by the way, who was the ACC commissioner who brought Florida State into the conference? Boo's dad, Gene. There's a whole 6 degrees of separation with Boo Corrigan here, which is really pretty unseemly. I grant you all of that. I grant you the playoff committee did a horrible job in a lot of things. The fact that Liberty is ranked ahead of SMU, when on the conference call on that Sunday, Boo Corrigan admitted, yeah, Liberty didn't really play anybody, but they went undefeated. Well, wait a second. Florida State's undefeated, and you just took them out of the conversation. So what the heck, Boo? And it basically told all the G5 schools, hey, don't bother scheduling anybody. Take the Liberty path. Just don't schedule anyone hard. Go undefeated, and you'll get the nod over a team like SMU, who lost to 2 top 12 teams, along the way. There was so much that they did wrong. They were wrong. Look, I was in the press box at the ACC championship game, Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, and there were a bunch of us sitting there watching the game saying, this is sadly giving the committee what they wanted. This sludge of a game, which frankly, I thought Florida State's defense was spectacular that night. I thought it was so impressive. But you could hear the other people in the press box, some of the national media, talking about, oh, this is going to kill Florida State. I'm like, man, it shouldn't.
Which is ironic, because if you watch at the same time, if you watch the Iowa Michigan,
right, which I had on my tablet next to my laptop in the press box,
which is the problem, and therein lies all of the issues. Mm-hmm. And this is why I always tell people, as a guy who's been deposed, mm-hmm. and is currently going through a civil suit, mm-hmm. this is why they'll get picked apart. And sometimes I say this about Kirk, and I just tweeted at it. Was like, sometimes when you talk too much, you forget what you say. Uh-huh. And these guys literally have said even the idea. And if I were to use their their metric, what they said in the last one. Florida State is not good enough to be a top 4 team because they have lost because their offense is just not good enough. Let's say I agree to that. So it's better than Georgia, who's lost one game. So you rank where you rank them makes absolutely no sense to what you said. And then the real thing, and this is where, again, why I do believe they'll win and I'll have a case, is because somebody told somebody something. There's one people that know everything. That's Vegas. There is no way that Florida State went from an 85% chance per Vegas on Saturday evening when all games concluded, and Alabama had a 15% chance to a coin flip by 8 a.m. Nothing changed. So as the attorney one of the guys that I'm going with the stuff is, we were not able to present the information that he wanted fast enough, so he believes that something's there. So when there is something there like this, you have to understand it's the reason why the attorney general worded it the way she worded it.
Sure.
She didn't word it like she worded it in the manner in which you're going to present this information though. And all it takes for college football to be destroyed is to have the was it the Black Sox scandal that we had in baseball? All it takes is that. And do you want the intent over something that kind of will be changed next year, but based upon what your wording is, not yours, but the College Football Committee,
right? Next
year, if we take the top 12 teams, what's not the same in the top 12? That's right, the rankings as of right now. All those teams that are in the top 12, what 2 conferences will they be in? Right. So say Florida State is the 12th team next year, and they're an undefeated conference champion. But yet, the Big Ten and the SEC are considered to be the 2 power. So again, the problem, and this is when people keep saying, I don't understand why they're raising a fuss. It's literally the way that America was made. Somebody has to raise the fuss for everybody else, or call it what it is. We have this in basketball every year, the Big Ten SEC Challenge. Just call it the Big Ten SEC Challenge in football, and nobody will be mad. Don't put on a masquerade that this is a national competition between all the Power 5 conferences and the G5 when this is just absolutely not true.
So let me play devil's advocate to a certain extent, because I think both of you know, James certainly does, what my stance is on this, that Florida State got screwed, that they earned a playoff spot. So let's take that out of it. Kirk Herbstreit made some comments today, and the one place where I can certainly back him up is that he's an analyst and he's just asked who are the 4 best teams in the country. And that's certainly his prerogative to say that Florida State's the 20th best team in the country, regardless of their record. That should have no impact. It should have no impact on the committee. All right. Unless there is some collusion that can be found, unless there are some unsavory tactics that are behind the Iron Curtain, whether that's SEC and ESPN, whatever those dots that can be connected, possibly. If that's in play, that's a whole other deal. But if it can be proven, or if it can't be proven that the committee is acting in some unsavory way, if they're just making decisions based on who they believe are the 4 best teams in the country, I don't know how this can be challenged.
Well, the guy with big ears that has the little ear pods, what's his name? Paul Feinbaum. Again, this is why I say, Mark, the biggest problem in all of this is these guys keep talking. And they keep, like Paul Feinbaum literally said, it's our job to influence. You're using that. The SEC, the ESPN saves $150 million by Alabama being in there. They
can say that, but unless somebody can prove that that's having an impact.
But what I'm saying is, if there's $150 million savings by moving a team into the situation and you're doing something unprecedented, and numerous people who are part of the network that saves the money saying this, I put it like this. I wouldn't want them to be, if I don't have anything, I would turn my phone over. But I probably wouldn't want that, because there's because the only thing with civil, the thing we're talking about, so it's the difference between criminal and civil. Criminal is innocent until proven guilty without a shadow of a doubt. Civil is, all I have to do is prove that there's enough smoke that there has to be a fire. And even if you go to the jury, you do not have. And what the problem is that no person can sit here and say, damn, you know what? That is a lie. Even if they're upstanding, which they could be. But if I ask you for it, you'll never tell me, which is why I have to sue. And if they were transparent, easiest way to get rid of all of this, open up the books. We televise everything else. Everything is reality TV. We see locker room. What is it? Hard Knocks. You get a chance to see what it's like in the locker room. People are amazed when we mic up players. Oh my God, they're so vulgar. Show us the committee minutes. You do an hour special every week. Just do a Monday night. Here is the committee meeting. We do it. Everybody's local broadcasting has city council meetings put up. It's not something that's outside of what Americans do. The problem is, anytime you put something behind closed doors and then you have something unprecedented happen, because this is what the key is. There has never been, including the BCS, an undefeated Power 5 champion excluded for a one loss in what was it, 30 years? And then you use the example that everybody uses is a terrible example. TCU, the same TCU that beat Michigan, that won a game in the college football playoff. Like, we're now saying that, oh, well, we don't want another TCU. TCU didn't just luck into the national. They beat Michigan, who, by the way, what happened to Michigan the year before when they played Georgia? Didn't they get pummeled by Georgia, if I remember correctly? So we don't want another TCU, but we want another Michigan. The problem isn't in the decision. It's in what they said led to the decision and the unprecedented nature. And the problem is civilly, not criminally, because nobody committed any crimes. Civilly, you said that this is what we're doing. So everybody's participating in a manner in which it's done. So there's a case. But we all know that I know why I wouldn't want it to go to trial. I don't want something crazy that I don't want nobody else that I done said about somebody. I don't want to be John Gruden. That's what I wouldn't want. And it's always interesting when those guys get in the room. But the key is they could just right now just say, hey, here are the minutes of what we did and how we got to it. And we could legitimately dead all of this. Just release the minutes.
So before I allow Tony to cut loose on that, I'll just make two quick comments. One would be that I think aren't necessarily, I won't call them aces in the hole, but there's something close to that the committee has. One would be that while everything is true what you said about TCU and could be said about Cincinnati and some other selections, what can also be said is that they've made selections in the past that were not good financial selections. Cincinnati was not a good financial selection. TCU was not a good financial selection. So they can make a history behind making other selections that were not good financial selections. The other one would be the injury factor with Jordan Travis. It is written in the criteria, and it's been in play ever since year one. And there's really only one time that it's come up and been a major component of the selection, and that was a whole different situation in year one. So they do have that defense of, look at this team offensively. We're making judgment calls here, and it's not about just the record. We just don't select the best records. Although their 9-year history before that is they've never jumped. Yes, a better record had a lesser record jump. So that is unprecedented, both undefeated, and they have just never simply jumped a team with a worse record over another Power 5 with a better record. That's never happened in 10 years, except for this. So there's certainly a case on the Florida State side, but just drawing to the committee's defense there is an injury component, and they have made selections in the past that were not financial gains for the college football playoff.
Let me take that injury point to an issue, because, and here's where nailing down the committee as James wants and all the Florida State fans want is going to be difficult. It's because they talked out of their rear ends for much of the process. All right. When Jordan Travis got hurt, the following week, Florida State was still number 4. If you were going to bump them down because you were concerned about the injury, that was the time to do it. And in full transparency, I was on other shows advocating that Washington should have been moved up to number 4 at that point, mostly because Washington had played and beaten more top 25 teams than Florida State had at that point. But if you're going to take the injury into account, you can't wait until the final Sunday to use that as a rationale for why you move someone. You've got to move them along the process with the injury. That would have been the time to do it, which was 2 to 3 weeks before the final decision. The fact that you kept them at number 4 for much of that time and then bumped them down because of the injury, using the injury just doesn't work for me at all. Yes, it is in their criteria. Absolutely. They have absolutely every right to do it. They misused it and they used it at the wrong time. And therefore their use of it really lacks credibility for me.
You're right. I made the same point on other videos.
It would be crazy if we had an example of a quarterback of a team having an injured quarterback winning a national championship. It's like, has it ever happened before?
But the difference is we have that quarterback prove that they could be an outstanding offense against a quality team, and we didn't have that here.
Fair. Top 15. So if Ohio State were to be the top 15 ranked team, they would be considered pretty good. Oh, Louisville was 14 with an amazing offense that got held to the lowest offensive output they ever had. Now, without even going into that, with the third string quarterback that would not be playing in the playoff game in the month, by the way, right, they had a better offensive output than the team you put in the playoff that was fully healthy. Mm-hmm. The problem is the rationale you use for one and the standards you hold one to, mm-hmm, you're not holding everybody else to, because that means, and who knows what could have happened at the end of the month. We've seen Alabama have a quarterback mess up their ankle, have a specific type of surgery, and come back and play. That means if Jordan Travis would have played that game, you'd think we would have mercy ruled him. Which, again, you can't play what ifs in those situations. Which
the committee did. I think the committee, I got to be honest with you, I think the committee thought they were going to get let off the hook when they saw that, that Brock Glenn was going to be the quarterback for that game, because I was there and Tate Rodemaker went out and went into pregame warmups, full uniform, helmet on, went and threw, and we were all thinking he was going to play. And then when the team came out, he wasn't with them. He came out about 5 minutes later in street clothes, stood on the sideline. We were all watching that. And my suspicion was the committee thinks they just got let off the hook. They think Louisville's going to take care of the business for them, and they don't have to worry about it. And so then when they got backed into a corner on Sunday, you pull the Jordan Travis injury card, and here it's in, bylaw, whatever, page 8, paragraph 3, when they hadn't used it previously in this particular circumstance. So they got back to into a corner and they looked like idiots.
And again,
I got to tell you real quickly, not to interrupt, James, I got to tell you real quickly, I was on a show the day after this, the playoff committee announcements. And just so you know, my solution to it was to blow up the entire committee and start over. Get rid of all of them. Every single one of them. I know that there are former players, there's ADs, there's all this. Get rid of all of them and start over before you start the next playoff rounds.